Modern property rights began in the year 1215 AD under the English monarch King John and the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta was a list of principles that were agreed to between the king and barons and earls of the land. But the true story of Magna Carta dates back into the mid-12th century and a battle for control between the monarch and the church. The importance of the church in the 12th century was its influence that it could exercise over the common people. To control the church meant influence over the population, but of greater importance was the financial income that it could generate. King John's father, King Henry II, had attempted to influence positions in the church with minimal success. King John similarly attempted to place persons of his choosing into influential positions, which earned him the wrath of Pope Innocent III, who subsequently excommunicated him in 1209 and in 1212 considered that he was deposed. By considering that he was deposed, the church was signalling to its parishioners that they no longer had a loyalty to him. We see this titanic fight between the King of England on the one hand, who considers himself to be a despot, as in all-powerful, and the Church of Rome under the Pope, who similarly has strong influence over the people. Remembering that we're not just talking about some sort of middle-class people, we're talking about everyone, from barons, from masters, all the way to serfs. Because as far as the population was concerned, the key to heaven after life was via the church, and therefore they had a vested interest to ensure that they were going up and not down into the other place, hell, Hades, however you want to describe it. There was this Goliath battle between the monarch on one hand and the church on the other. With the church saying that John was deposed, the idea was that it would incite rebellion and it would release the people from their loyalty to him. The reality of the situation, though, was slightly different in that the people didn't revolt. They took it in their stride. It caused some difficulties with the church in England, as it was at the time. However, it didn't incite the sort of revolution that the church had been pressing for. The two were largely at a stalemate. However, in 1213, King John capitulated to the Pope's demands, which resulted in the Pope withdrawing decrees of excommunication. However, not before John had seized church property and made a handsome profit from selling it back the rights of use. But John's principal reason for capitulating was the fear that the Pope would fund a French naval invasion of Britain, terminating his reign. Pope Innocent III may have won the battle, But 300 years later, King Henry VIII would be spoiling for a rematch, and he'd be a very different customer. But there was a further reason for King John's capitulation, beyond simply the threat of some sort of French invasion, which was never going to happen anyway, because unbeknownst to him, or indeed the Pope, the French had come out the wrong side of a battle, had lost all their ships anyway, but neither side appears to have known about that at the time. That aside, King John also capitulated to the Pope in order to benefit from the Church's support in quelling another rebellion by English barons. He needed the support of the Church as a powerful ally against the equally powerful barons. Now, the barons were in revolt due to violation by John of both substantive and procedural rights which were established under common law, custom and agreement. In particular, the barons disagreed with substantial increases in taxation which were required by the Treasury in order to fund their ongoing battle with France. Barons who refused to cooperate with the sovereign found their properties were confiscated, heavy fines issued, and ultimately violators could be deprived of liberty and also hung. The barons and their supporters attacked castles and seized London in an all-out battle with the monarch. On June 15, 1215, in order to terminate the conflict, the king formally executed a document that the barons had submitted to him, which was variously called Charter of Liberties or the Articles of the Baron, but ultimately became known as the Great Charter or the Magna Carta. John had ruled England with an iron fist as a despot sovereign, with absolute power over absolutely everyone and everything within his realm. He could do what he wanted and was accountable to no one. All that changed on the 15th of June, 1215. In the words of Charles McIlwain, a historian, when King John substituted his will for the law in proceeding by force against vassals or those people who wrongly had not been judicially proved, civil war and the Great Charter were the result. It was inevitable. Magna Carta introduced the checks and balances of power that keep our society safe today from rulers with a fascist bent. It is from Magna Carta that such basic rights that we accept today originate. However, from a property rights perspective, Chapter 39 of the original 1215 version is of particular importance, and it says, and I'll quote from it, "No freeman shall be arrested or detained in prison or deprived of his freehold or in any way molested, and we the king will not set forth against him nor sinned against him unless by the lawful judgment of his peers or by the law of the land." Now, there are several different versions of the Magna Carta. The 1225 version, which came out 10 years later under John's son, King Henry III, extended and reiterated this clause as a replacement, being clause 29 now. But you see in this clause, original clause 39, that no man shall be arrested, detained, or deprived of his freehold. We see that the two important components are liberty and property. Property is raised as being a fundamental right of all persons under the Magna Carta. The Great Charter, the Magna Carta, begins the decline of despots, sovereigns, and the feudal land system. It doesn't kill them, but it begins their decline into oblivion. The time of absolute monarchy power was largely over, and representation of the people is born, albeit that originally these new rights were reserved for barons only, and only later extended to the general population.